Yes, I am a programmer. I don't know if that's going to come out here or not. There's this actually, I've kept the technology bits of this a bit thin intentionally because I think there's an awful lot of other things around the platform that have to be in place before the technology works. But I'd love to talk to you about technology if you are interested, because that's what we do. I'm going to talk about platforms. Platforms it's a term that has gotten a lot of traction recently. And I'm going to have a particular definition of what I mean by a platform. I'm talking about a combination of technology, organizational structure, operating model, and so on that people are finding enable and accelerate their ability to execute their business strategy. So just a little overview of what I'm talking about. First, going to describe what I mean by a platform a little bit and how businesses are becoming more successful because of the platform. Talk about what is that value and give you some examples from some businesses around the world. I want to talk about then the qualities that a platform, that your technology platform needs to have in order to be what we're calling a platform. And then I want to talk just briefly about some of the technical pillars, some of the underlying technical foundations that need to be there to make the platform work. And lastly, hopefully give you some ideas about where to get started in your business, building out the platform for your execution. So this is exactly the kind of slide I hate. It's a pseudoscientific graph with no actual scale on it. But I think it gives me something to talk to, a visual while I talk to you about this. So most of your businesses are probably your IT assets have been built as point solutions. You either have silos or you have channel systems that were built in relative isolation from each other. And then you've integrated them. So, and I think one of the key things you need to remember about or take away from this is I have come to this profound belief that integration is a really pernicious idea that is infused throughout IT and IT practice. People view integration as an inevitability and they assign it a function. We're talking about an alternative to integration here. We need to get away from talking about integration, instead talk about a platform. So this green line is probably where most traditional businesses are. They build point solutions, they build silos, they integrate them, but over time, the more you have and the more difficult things you have to do, you get slower and slower in your ability to execute, and it hinders your ability to actually make experiments, to be able to do small things, experiment, and fail. On the other hand, we have a lot of examples, primarily in the digital, in the internet realm, of companies that are able to accelerate their execution, that are able to go faster and faster. And that's because they've had the luxury of building platforms from the ground up. Amazon being one of the most famous of those, creating a platform of services on which they can build new business ideas. And I'll probably refer to Amazon a couple of times more throughout this talk. So the difference between these two organizations is in one case, you have a bunch of point solutions that you have to integrate. Greater and greater friction happens over time. In the other case, you have a platform. People have built out a platform of capabilities from which you can draw a palette from which you can assemble new business ideas and experiments with. And so I want to talk about what are the qualities of those platforms and how do we go about getting one. Now, platform is a really overloaded term. You've probably already heard it this morning a few times. And so I'm going to go through a few definitions here, and I think what I'm talking, and I will, over the course of this talk, hopefully it will become clear to you what I'm talking about when I talk about a platform. But if you look at the dictionary, there's a platform, the most fundamental definition is that of something physical. So a platform, a horizontal surface, and we are talking about something physical in some ways. We're talking about actually building out some IT assets. Maybe you have some virtual infrastructure. Maybe you have some actual metal. Platform could also be an idea, like a political platform, right? It's a plan. It's an idea of a way of organizing or a set of principles around which you can organize. So the this is also what I want to talk about, is a set of principles and a plan. So it's assets, it's principles, it's a place to create this ecosystem. It's a community for people within your organization to come together and share capabilities. And it's also software, right? We have this idea of a software platform. You think of Oracle, you think of SAP and things like that, a major piece of software on which you build other things. And there are definitely aspects of software to what I'm talking about. There are pieces that are software you have to build, but it's not, by itself, software is not a solution. So here's the definition that I would like you to keep in mind, at least for the next half hour, and that is what we're calling platforms for execution. It's not just us, it's an idea that's taken hold really in the industry. And it's several things. It's a foundational set of tools, so it's a technological and a business foundation. It's a set of APIs. APIs play a big role in this. It's not just the APIs. And in order to be successful with APIs, you need to have a lot of other stuff. It's a set of tools. It's a set of services in the sense of human services, services that people perform for each other. It's also an organizational structure, a way of aligning your organization to your technology assets, and an operating model, a way of operating those technology assets. So you need to bring all of these things together, and that's going to be one of the key takeaways. And what it does is empower autonomous teams. So the problem, as I will try to illustrate with the integration and point solutions, is that your teams' work gets very much coupled across the entire organization when you approach things from a silos and integration standpoint. What we're trying to do is enable teams to experiment and work autonomously at the edges of your organization so that they don't have to couple their work to everybody else's work. And we want to deliver digital business solutions quickly and at scale, as everybody does right now. So think of the platform that I'm talking about as the key to unlock your existing assets. A lot of traditional businesses are concerned with upstart competitors from the digital world. They're coming, they don't have the technological baggage that holds them back and prevents them from moving quickly, and they're able to displace and disrupt the marketplace. We've been hearing this for years. But traditional businesses shouldn't have to worry about that because you have assets that far surpass the upstarts, right? You have knowledge, you have business processes, you have relationships with customers, you have data on those customers and about your business that you need to unlock. The problem is it's in legacy systems. It's hard to get to quickly. You can't get that information, that knowledge, that expertise out to the customer where they are at any time, anywhere. And that's where the digital companies have an advantage. So you really need to figure out a way to unlock those assets so that you can accelerate your ability to deliver new business ideas. I'm specifically not talking about a business model here. So this is probably the most popular use of the term platform is business model. I think there are aspects of the platform business model, the two-sided business model, the producer-consumer thing, that is a metaphor for what we think needs to happen inside IT organizations and what already happens inside successful businesses in organizing their IT. But I'm not talking necessarily about platform businesses, although platform businesses usually have a solid technological foundation, a solid technology platform on which they can do business. So I'm going to give you a few examples here. The first one is BBVA. BBVA is a financial organization headquartered in Spain. They have something like 130,000 employees, 70 million customers, or give or take a few. They are headquartered in Spain, but they're all over. They're the largest financial institution in Mexico. And they've made some tremendous inroads in digitizing their business since 2014. So they made in 2014, maybe earlier, they made a big push towards digital. You can see that some of these numbers are very impressive. Some of you are trying to hit some of these numbers in terms of numbers of transactions that are done online as opposed to in branches, the number of customers they have that are purely digital, the penetration in the digital market, and the number of mobile transactions they're able to support. Very enviable numbers across the globe. And this was the result of a very deliberate digital transformation that they started a few years ago. There's a lot of information. You can Google, there's a lot of information about BBVA online. They're very public in sharing what they've done. And these are there's an article that talks about the 3 stages of digital transformation, and I want to point out the middle of the stage there consists of making an in-depth change to the technology platform to convert it to more modular and flexible infrastructure. So this is a key enabler. They do things like, in Peru, you can order a credit card online in about 45 seconds. It's delivered to you within 24 hours. That's as compared to what might have taken 5 days in the past. So initiatives like that, where they are targeting very narrow customer segments, so they pick out one customer segment, they're able to roll out quickly new business ideas that are tailored exactly to that customer segment very quickly. So that's the benefits of making the investment in their technology platform there. Another example I'd like to show you is Otto. I don't know if you've heard of Otto. They are the largest online retailer in Germany. Otto started as a catalog company. So they've been around since the 1800s as a catalog company, and they recognized several years ago that they needed to make a transition to online. And they set out to build a new technology platform that would support that and to actually replace the product that they had that was supporting most of their online transactions. Finally, one example closer to home, Macquarie Bank late last year, rolled out an entirely new digital banking platform, so retail personal banking platform supporting online services. This was the result of building the platform starting in about 2014. So that gives you an idea. They moved very fast. That's pretty, from 2014 to late 2016 is pretty good. Macquarie also was a very mature technology organization to start with. Macquarie had their processes, if I can use the A word, they were very agile. All of their delivery processes were very agile. They were able to build software quickly, targeted to customer needs. But when they started building out this digital platform, they found that they hit a bottleneck. They couldn't actually move things as quickly as they needed to. They couldn't deliver new value as quickly as was demanded by this new program. So they set about building a new platform. Data plays a key role in that. Small services, I don't know if they're micro or not, but they have many smaller services, a much more diverse range of technologies. So rather than having a very rigid adherence to one technical solution, they have a variety of technologies. They spent a lot of time warehousing or creating a data lake and making that data available easily to anybody who wants to build. So they can roll new things out very quickly, and they're able to do things like no transaction fees on ATM transactions from other banks. So they're able to refund transactions, identify when you're charged a fee for using another bank's ATM and refund that. Rebates on transactions over a certain amount. So this is something that they couldn't have done. Their systems were not flexible enough to actually accommodate those kinds of ideas before they built out the platform. So again, there's a lot of information about the technology underlying this if you want to Google that online. But that's a little more Australian-oriented example. So let me talk a little bit now about the qualities that a platform needs to have. What is it that makes a platform a platform? The first thing, and a lot of this is mindset, right? So a lot of this is how you view, how you operate, and how you think about the way that people interact within your technology organization. First of all, platform is a product. It has to be treated as a product internally. Secondly, the services, the APIs that are offered by the platform have to be self-service. They have to be accessible. Automation has to be accessible in a self-service way without a lot of ceremony and a lot of human intervention. And finally, the platforms need to enable ecosystems. Hopefully the previous speaker will agree with me on that. So you need to create this ecosystem within your organization of collaboration, and the more people you get on the platform, the capabilities accelerate. So let me go into each of those. Platform, what do I mean by a platform as a product? I mean, first of all, it has to be compelling. Think about the qualities that a successful product has. People don't think about offering internal internal services as a product. I've been involved in an awful lot of, I've seen a lot of SOA implementations. I've been around, I'm old enough to have been around. I remember where I was the first time I heard the term SOA. And I have seen these things, the people expose them, they build services, they say, here you go. They don't bother to find out how people use them. They don't bother to find out if they're actually useful. So a platform, in contrast, needs to be compelling. It needs to be something people want to use. It needs to be easy and pleasant for people to use, so that it's better for them. They want to use it over using another service from an outside vendor or a different service internally. And you do that by becoming customer focused. You need to understand the voice of the customer. There's so much attention paid to reuse in traditional integration, enterprise integration. We need to get more reuse. When people really need to focus on use, they need to say, what is it that I can actually, let's build one thing that people actually use, and let's make it simple enough and easy enough so that people actually want to come and use it. And then you have to do some outreach. You can't just put it there and assume that people are going to use the platform. You need to do some marketing around it. You need to actually go out and sell it. This is what makes a product. This is what differentiates a product from just another service that's offered within your organization. It's really important to think about serving the customer that serves the customer. It's a phrase that one of my colleagues in the US uses that we like a lot. It's you serve the customer that serves the customer. Not everybody in the organization, if you've got a big enough corporation, is going to have direct access to the customer, but they need to treat their colleagues internally as if they were customers. Self-service, I have a little story to talk about self-service here. So this is an organization I've worked at recently. Their infrastructure group was divided into these silos. There was, and every time you wanted to do something, roll out a new application, some new business idea, you had to engage each of these silos. So there was an automation group that built the scripts that were going to build your software and deploy your software. There's the Wintel group that managed they managed the hardware that the thing was going to run on, right? There's a DBA group. We know about DBA groups. There was the mid-range group, which actually managed the Linux operating system that the application had to run on. And then there was the middleware group who managed, because there were so many other groups that had to be corralled. There was a group that was particularly good at talking to people that was responsible for going around and making sure that everybody did their job. And so you had to engage the group that was going to engage the groups as well. So this obviously creates a lot of friction, but this is not an unusual situation, unfortunately, and you may have these in your organization. So the real pernicious evil here is the coupled backlog. So the thing is, you had to raise a support ticket with each one of those groups to get anything done, and that means each of those groups' backlogs were coupled together with the group that was trying to roll out some simple business change. And this creates friction, and this is the thing that we're trying to eliminate, is coupling these backlogs. We need each of these groups to be able to work, or we need the groups at the edge doing new things to be able to work autonomously. So the first iteration of trying to improve this was a step in the right direction, right? Is putting an API in front of this. And that's great. So now the delivery teams can access an API, but you know what happens behind the API? It automatically lodges support tickets for each one of those groups. And there's still a human process and I see this a lot. People, so many times I've seen people say we have cloud when really they have an API that lodges a support ticket, and you ask for a server, and 2 days later somebody has gone and provisioned the server by hand for you. That's not cloud. Please. That is one of the fundamental definitions of cloud is self-service, and that means self-service and automated. So this wasn't a platform. It wasn't really until they started offering the low-level services, automation services available through APIs, that this really, truly became a platform. So when you have source in this case, for this particular capability in this function, when you have source control, when you have the delivery pipelines, when you have platform as a service, all available, all automated processes available through APIs in a self-service way to delivery teams, then it becomes a platform. And then platforms need to enable ecosystems. And the way internally that we enable ecosystems is by making things simple. Again, like I said, you need to focus on use before you focus on reuse. So this is just a theoretical example, right? But it's probably one that people are familiar with. You have an international organization, you have products that are sold in North America, you have products that are sold in Australia. And each of those you may have grown that by acquisition, so they each have their own channel systems that integrate directly to those back-end systems. So then you come along, you want to have a more coordinated business, a more integrated business. And you need to access both of those legacy systems. It's usually up to the people at the edges to manage the complexity of this problem. So which of these I have to now integrate to each of these systems? Which one do I integrate with? How do I reconcile the the conflicting information that I get from both of these systems? The complexity gets pushed out to the edges because the people offering these services in the back end haven't thought about making things simple and easy for their consumers, the customers that serve the customers. A platform, on the other hand, hides this complexity behind an API. So it's really important to create a boundary of the complexity. And you may have many of these platforms in a complex organization. You may have many of these platforms that each of which represents a business capability. But you need to create a complexity boundary so that when new consumers of these things come on board, they can consume that API in a self-service way without talking to anybody, without asking for changes. They have a simple, it may not suit everybody, but it's simple enough that everybody can get up and running and get started with it. And that creates ecosystems because each one of those systems that comes online becomes a producer of data as well. And data is the currency that flows through this system that makes it valuable. That is the value, the token of value in these organizations, in these ecosystems, is data. So here's my technology slide. I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about what are the underlying technologies that need to be there to make this possible. This is what's nearest and dearest to our hearts at Thoughtworks. This is the heavy lifting that we do, and I'd be happy to talk to you more about this afterwards. But I just very quickly want to go through what the pillars. My colleagues and I around the world have been talking about this for a long time, and we've sort of landed on this categorization of the technology elements that have to be there to make this possible. These 5 different things. So first of all, you need to have true infrastructure on demand, the kind of stuff I was talking about before. Security, pipelines, more than just making compute available the way that Amazon does. You need to have the things that make that particular to your organization and make it useful for your organization. So whether that's the right kind of security, whether that's having the locations already available or whatever. It's more than simply infrastructure. You need to pay a lot of attention to APIs. So we talk a lot about APIs. It's really those internal APIs and how you design them. Creating APIs is not, you don't go buy a gateway. It's not about writing software. It's about understanding the business capability, abstracting that business capability in a nice, simple way that people can use and consume without asking for help every time they need to do it. That is where most API efforts fail, by the way. You need to make data self-service and open by default. So you need to be able to find the data. You need to be able to access it quickly. You need to be able to rely on the quality of the data. That means every person who has data in their system, every owner of data needs to be responsible for their own data quality, not push that responsibility off to some other group. They need to be true custodians of the data that they hold. Because a lot of what we're talking about here is experimentation, about doing things quickly and understanding customers' reaction to new features that you roll out. You need to have the right metrics and instrumentation in place. This is a technical problem. How do you measure things? And APIs help with this a lot. So how do you measure what customers are doing constantly? You need to measure everything and record that data. I know a lot of smaller organizations, Redbubble's a digital company, a very successful local digital company here in Melbourne. They release many, many times a day. They release new features. Every developer is able to see immediately when they release a feature what the impact of that is on conversion rates. They have set up the instrumentation and the ability to visualize and track the data they acquire to see exactly what the impact of every single feature they release is. That's what you need to have in place, and you need to provide that as a service. And finally, you need the support structure for customers and channels. I'm not talking about channel systems. I'm not talking about building websites or mobile apps. I'm talking about the things that support that. So you need to have a common identity. You need to think about common identity. You need to think about your content strategy. You need to think about the reverse logistics and how you're going to track the sale. You know, the digital customer journey has a very long precursor and a very long tail. So you need to be able to track the customer satisfaction after the sale for a long time. And you need the technology to be able to do that. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about technology. I think the question now is how you do this stuff. And that's probably in most of your minds. The first thing you need to take away is this is not, I'm not talking about something you're going to go out and buy off the shelf. Nobody's platform, if you have a competitive advantage, your platform can't be bought off the shelf. You need to build it yourself. You need to think about your own capabilities. You need to think about how those capabilities map onto your operating model, and you need to create, there may be pieces of the platform that you buy, there may be individual things, but there's no vendor, there's no consulting company that is going to do this for you. It's something you have to do yourself. So how do you get started? The first thing is you need to understand your business strategy, right? You need to, I'm often surprised at how, when I go to technology organizations, IT, how disconnected they sometimes are from the overall corporate business strategy. So you need to understand the business strategy, first of all. You need to have a very clear picture of that. And then you need to map your capabilities. So this is another thing I'm surprised that people haven't done. You need to take those, you need to understand what are your core capabilities, what are your core business capabilities. Not talking about technology here. How do those capabilities map into the knowledge required to deliver them, into the level of competitive differentiation that they create for you? Based on that, based on which capabilities you want, I think the crown jewels, the previous speaker talked about the crown jewels. Based on that, you need to then define what things become your platform. Which capabilities are they? They may be technology capabilities, they may be business capabilities, like billing, monitoring, whatever. You need to understand what constitutes these shared services that you're going to expose via the platform. And then you go about building the platform assets, right? You need to, there's a lot of technical, there's a lot of artifacts and code and systems and APIs that constitute the platform. But before you get to that, you need to understand what you're building and why you're building it. Then you need to provide some leadership. You need to make people in the entire organization understand that the platform is the first responsibility. So this is a slide that I borrowed very graciously. Simon Rake-Allen, who's the CTO at MYOB, loaned this to me. This is actually a little old now. They've gone through several iterations of this, but MYOB set out to build a platform to underlie their accounting products, their various accounting products. And they created this platform manifesto. And I like this for a lot of reasons. It's pretty. And it's something you can show to people that it's easy to take the information in. Small sound bites are easy to remember. But and the gist of this, if you note, is putting the good of the platform over the good of the individual. Whenever you go to build something, however small, you need to think, does this advance the platform? Does this make the platform stronger? Or does it just get me to my OKRs more quickly? So this needs to be in everybody's minds. And yours might look very different from this. Your principles and platform manifesto might look quite different from this. But the point is, leaders need to make this stuff explicit. And people need to understand that this is part of the strategy of the organization, and they're going to be rewarded for supporting the platform. And then it needs to be customer driven. And again, I mean the customers that serve the customers in many cases. So people don't think of APIs, of building and designing an API as a business problem. This is some work we did in North America to design an API according to a lean business model canvas. So building an API just like you would rolling a new business idea out to an external audience. What are the activities that need to take place? What are the revenue channels? Who are the partners that I'm going to work with in doing this? What are the customer segments? How am I going to measure my effectiveness? These are all the things you need to think about before you start building out the platform, before you start building out the APIs, which are the public face to the rest of the organization of the platform that you're building. And then only build the bits that you need at any given time. I'd be very disappointed if you all run out of here and go, we need to build a platform, start designing the platform. That's not the right approach. The right approach is we have a new business idea. Let's build that business idea out and let's harvest the platform elements that come out of that. So only build the bits you need. And then you need to have ownership. The platform needs to have an owner over the long term. We talk a lot about sticky teams. So you need to have a leader and a team that stays with the platform, stays with maybe one component of the platform at least over the long haul. And that team and that owner, and it doesn't have to be a technology person, better if it's a business person, needs to have accountability for the success of the platform. And the best way to ensure that accountability is transparency. So one of the technical foundations you need to have is the ability to be able to see how the platform is performing, dashboards, monitoring, alerts, things like that. So you need to be able to find things before you can use them. You need to know how well they're working before you want to bet your business on it. So providing that owners accountability and those owners providing transparency to how they're doing is key to making the platform successful. And then finally, you need to go out and sell the thing. The platform isn't going to happen by itself. You need to provide some evangelism. So that's harvesting. When I say build things out and then harvest the platform elements, that's the patterns, it's the tools, it's the documentation. You need to go out and get those things and make them easily available to you. You may need to make an investment in an internal consulting team that helps people use the platform. So as you're building up the ecosystem, you're going to need experts within your organization that can go out and help people be successful with that. It's not a passive activity. Creating the platform is a very active role. When you go to use AWS, again, referring back to Amazon, it doesn't require, you don't need to talk to anybody from Amazon to spin up a server in AWS. It's all there, but what people don't realize is that Amazon has spent a lot of time talking to you before you got there. Amazon spent a lot of time making you aware of the services that were available. They spent a lot of time compiling the assets that made those services easy to understand, and they spent a lot of time designing the services so that they were easy for people to use. And all of that work happened before somebody actually came and tried to use it. And that's, I think, what we're trying to get to. Okay, so what do you want to, this is what I want you to take away. First of all, we're not talking just about digital, right? We're talking about executing your entire business, about doing things smaller and cheaper and faster. Digital is really started this conversation, but it's really just about business. And you need to figure out how you're going to unlock those assets to stave off the upstart competitors. You need to unlock the crown jewels in your organization, the knowledge, the customer relationships, the business processes. And it needs to be a holistic approach. It's not just buy an API gateway or build a microservice. It's about aligning your organizational structure to that platform and operating the platform. You have to think about the operating model as well around that platform. How do you do that? And finally, it's not something that you can buy. There's nobody that's going to sell you this thing. It's hard work, indeed, but it's possible, and you need to go out and do it yourself. Thank you.